Okay, Sinister, I think, might be. I don't think it's the best scary movie, but it might be my favorite, like, just pure horror film. From a horror standpoint, it might be my favorite one. And I told you, I talked about this before. Sinister was the last scary movie that I had to turn off and watch it in the daylight.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I remember you telling me
Because
about
it's
that. Yeah.
freaking terrifying.
It is pretty scary.
And now I feel validated because we see that study that says that Sinister, scientifically speaking, is the scariest movie of all time. Mm-hmm. But listen, Sinister's, it leaves me speechless. It's so freaking scary, dude.
Yeah.
So freaking scary. Part of the reason why it's so scary is because, well, first of all, anything having to do with like demonic creatures is always scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree.
But also it's scary because you learn that the demonic creature that is I guess I can say haunting now.
Right. Yeah.
And also possessing and also just
influencing
all this bad things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It has been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And at the end of the film, you learn that it continues to stay around.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies, and it has kind of become a cliche where, like, the scariest things are these dangers that don't go away at the end of the movie. A monster that is not killed at the end of the movie, that continues to just destroy people's lives. Like, that is a scary thought, that there is no happy ending, okay? Mm-hmm. And this movie does that so well. But let's just get into the story of Sinister a little bit. Ethan Hawke is a writer, kind of washed up. They moved to this new house because he's not quite as successful as he used to be. They can't afford to live in the same house that they used to. And he goes there kind of looking for inspiration, kind of trying to get his career back on track. And he finds these home videos in the attic of his new house. And in these home videos, they are beginning in like the 1960s. They're videos of like these family, like terrible things happening to these families in this house. And it's like, it's hard to look at, hard to watch for him. And he starts to think that he has basically uncovered a serial killer. So he goes to the police, he shows them all the videos, he's doing his research and all of these things. And then he starts to see this demonic figure in the pictures and in the videos and drawings of this face it's at one point it's just labeled Mr. Boogie.
Yeah.
And so he starts to see this thing everywhere. And then at one point, so he's trying to solve the crime, right? He learns that there was a murder that took place. This whole family was killed, and one of the kids went missing, and he wants to learn the fate of that missing kid. So that's kind of how he gets into it. And then he starts to find multiple of these videos. Like, he realizes it wasn't just one family. It wasn't just one kid that went missing. He's noticing a trend. And then it really kicks off when one day he hears the projector running in the attic. And he goes up there, and all of the kids are sitting up there watching the projector.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
In, like, different states of... Like, all the kids had died.
Right.
They're all up there. And then that's when Mr. Boogie, if that's what you want to call him, physically presents himself to this author. And he just starts just ripping their life apart and turning things upside down. And creepy things start happening with the author's kids. They're making, scary drawings. And the daughter has this imaginary friend that is the kid who had gone missing from the previous family. And it's just, dude, it is freaky. Like, my heart was racing the entire time that I watched this movie. Like I said, I had to do it in multiple runs. And I don't want to completely spoil the ending and how it happens. But basically, at the end of the movie, we see the box of films again. But there's one in there for this new family. And it ends.
Yeah.
And then we get Eventually we'll get another one, but you kind of are left with this uneasy feeling. There's no happy ending. You know that something else will happen to the next family that moves into this house, and it's this kind of never-ending cycle. First of all, Ethan Hawke is so good in this movie.
Oh yeah.
He's underrated as an actor, but this performance is one of the best of his careers, I think, which is saying a lot for a horror film because you don't typically tend to see that. And then on top of his performance, this movie's just freaky as shit. I don't even know what else I can say.
I think one reason, and I think a lot of the movies on our list kind of do this. There's so much dedication to the story and in adding to the fear that the story is kind of presenting. Like the fact that all the home videos were actually made by the director on Super 8 film, which is such a seeming, like, it's kind of this small little thing that they decided to do. Mm-hmm. But it adds so much depth to those scares that you get. And this movie is by the way, rife with jump scares.
Oh yeah.
But they are all so effective because in each jump scare, something truly bad is happening when you get that jump scare.
Yes.
Right? Like all of the videos just have the most shocking and just abrupt jump scares. Like the one where I think someone gets a lawnmower to the face. That one. Ugh. And you just, for some reason, there's like a loud like noise when it comes over, as if you're listening to a lawnmower all of a sudden just rip on.
Yep.
And just goes, oh dude, that one
and
made me jump out of my seat.
Those Super 8 films are some of the scariest parts of the movie, if not the scariest. And because we start to see this creature, we'll see him like in the background. The films are all shot as if the people in it are being watched without knowing who's filming them or who's watching them. And the movie dives into that a little bit, and it explains it. But the videos themselves are so freaky, and we start to see the imagery of this creature. Like he'll just be in a tree somewhere, in a bush, like looking on, or we see somebody jump into the water and the person turns around and it's the face of the creature looking through the water up at us.
Right. And a lot of times those scenes happen when the characters aren't noticing him in the back. The demon's name is what? Bagul, Mr. Boogie. Yeah. A lot of times he kind of appears or like like you think you're looking at an image or a drawing of him, and all of a sudden he kind of like comes into the screen and actually moves around.
It happens when the characters have no idea. Like that's designed for us as viewers. Mm-hmm. The one that I think of is when the image of the creature is pulled up on the computer screen, and I think it was Ethan Hawke's character who's looking at it. Yeah. And he turns away, but the camera focuses on the computer screen and nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. And then the picture just turns its head and it cuts away. And this movie is so good at creating that tension and lingering on certain shots that just make us uncomfortable and make us start to feel kind of anxious. Mm-hmm. The one that I think of is we get to the end of one of the videos that's playing on the projector screen. Mm-hmm. And then we sit there for however many seconds just watching this film reel spin and spin, and the film at the end is hitting the projector and it's just clicking, but it just sits there and it just builds tension because we know the more sinister meaning of these films that we're watching. And I mean, it's like you said, it uses jump scares so well, and this is one of the only this is kind of a stereotypical horror movie. All of the ones that, or at least most of the ones on our list, are pretty unique for one reason or another. Right. This one is pretty much what you think of when you think of a scary movie, but it does it much better than most. It
kind of toes the line of being cliched, right? Having so many horror notes that it becomes cliched. But you're right, it does it to such an effective level that it kind of it kind of doesn't ever go over that line.
It uses the cliches to its advantage, and it uses them exactly the way that they should be used in horror movies. It doesn't just use the cliches for the sake of using them. It doesn't use them just because it's a horror movie and that's what you're expected to do. It uses them to actually build the story and to make it actually scary. I think that it does a much better job than a lot of other horror movies, and it also is kind of a mystery thriller type. Like it blends genres, but it's very scary.
There's a lot of investigation going on.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say about this movie to kind of wrap it up, because in our discussions last week, I kind of shit on cheaply made horror movies.
Yeah.
The fact that you can have not much money and make a really shitty horror movie and make a lot of money back. There are a lot of good horror directors out there who can make a great horror movie with next to no money. Sinister was made for $3 million. And it made $87.7 million at the box. It was made for $3 million. A very, very low budget movie with great actors, great characters, and amazing scares. And this movie is one of the perfect examples of how you don't need a lot of money to make a truly effective horror movie. Even if you have to play into the stereotypes sometime of a horror movie, if you do it to your advantage, which this movie does 95% of the time, you make what's almost like scientifically considered to be the most scary movie ever made.
It's kind of weird because we spent basically 2 episodes talking about where horror sometimes goes wrong and like what is wrong with the genre and why people don't really appreciate it.
Right.
All of those things that we talked about as negatives apply to this movie, but I point to all of them as positives.
Yes. Because it's done with care.
Yes.
Because the director, the writer, the producers,
and it's all very intentional.
They do it with a sense of purpose. They don't do it just to create cheap scares and to get it into the theaters. They do it because they want to make something truly scary.
Yep.
Right. And I want to use this as kind of a transition into our next film, Alien, because Alien was another one of those movies that didn't have, compared to some of the sci-fi epics that had come out at the time, did not really have the production budget that other movies did. There's no like specific number in terms of budget for Alien, but it was made somewhere between $8 and $15 million, which in the late 70s was a decent amount of money. But at the time, a lot of space-based sci-fi movies were, you had Star Wars that had just come out 2 years before, and you had 2001: A Space Odyssey that came out 10 years before that. So, sci-fi was kind of a genre that was done on an epic scale, right? And Alien was done in space, but the majority of the movie takes place on a ship where you're confined with walls,
right? Almost the whole time.
Where do I even start with this movie, man? I think a good starting place is one thing you brought up. You brought up the beginning of the movie, where you're just kind of getting these establishing shots of the ship that they're on. And one of the things I love so much about all of these establishing shots in this movie is it kind of gives you this kind of human quality to the ship. Like, a lot of sci-fi is really futuristic, and they're trying to go for all this futurism and things that you might not see yet. But like in Alien, the ship has, it has regular chairs, and it has like the bird thing that like drips down and like gets water, right? And there's like condensation and water dropping from the like it's kind of a grimy, not very futuristic setting. The setting itself it feels very lived in, right? And I think it's a great way to kind of set up the world we're going to be in, and kind of what these characters are living through too. A lot of the conversation between the two engineers on the ship is about getting bonuses, right?
Yeah.
When you're like, where are we going to get our bonuses? And Sigourney Weaver's character at one point, he's just like, I'm sure you're going to get what's coming to you, or something like that. There's so much
foreshadowing.
Yeah, the great foreshadowing. But there's so much in this movie that is done to kind of create a sort of a non-epic, non-grandiose kind of vibe, right? The movie wants to feel very human and contained and kind of, I don't know. It doesn't want to have. It doesn't want to want you to think it has like these grandiose ideas, right?
Yeah.
It wants you to live with the characters, and I think one of the best ways to do that, and one of the ways this movie does that, is by making each character in this movie seem very just kind of normal.
Well, for a sci-fi movie, it's very grounded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of. I mean, they're in space, yes, but a lot of what happens takes place on a ship. And people are just walking around. It's not futuristic in that, there's all this upgraded tech. Mm-hmm. It's futuristic in that it's 2234 or whatever. It's 200 years in the future.
Yeah.
But they still work on computers, and they still, have magazines and stuff like that. And that could be a product of just, not having a good idea of what futuristic stuff would look like. But a lot of sci-fi movies back in the day did try and use futurism to kind of create a scene or a setting. Mm-hmm. And this movie kind of doesn't do that. It does away with that. And I think it helps ground it pretty early on and give you a very relatable feeling.
Yeah.
A kind of overall relatable feeling. So, I mean, I don't think we have to talk too much about the story of Alien because I feel like it's one of the most well-known sci-fi horror movies ever made. But it's this crew on the Nostromo. They're in a deep space mission headed back to Earth, and they get a signal from this planet saying, they don't know what kind of signal it is. They don't know if it's an SOS. They're not sure. It's just some random signal. So they go investigate, and they find this abandoned ship, and, they go down certain layers until they find a huge nest full of eggs, right? And that's where you get the first glimpse of a facehugger. And then the facehugger attaches itself to John Hurt's character. And then, the sequence of events leads up to the chest burster. And all, there's all these kind of well-known scenes in the first act of the movie mm-hmm. that lead up to what is probably one of the most tense kind of back and forth. It's almost like watching a chase sequence. Like a car chase,
yeah.
Except you're just watching people run around, back and forth, and a lot of the movie is about decision making and what the best way is to kind of kill this creature. So they go from trying to kill it in the air vents to okay, we need to abandon the ship to okay, we can lock it up in one of these rooms to okay, we have to destroy the ship. Mm-hmm. A lot of where this movie kind of rests its story is in mistakes that the characters make to try and save themselves. A lot of the results which end up in people dying is of people going, we need to try and do this, and then failing.
Right. Well, and that goes a long way in humanizing these characters. It makes them relatable. That they make decisions, and if it's a wrong decision, there are consequences. And it's kind of interesting too the way that you mentioned the scale. Like we know that this takes place in space, but it's always very confined. At times, even a little bit claustrophobic. But you also get the idea that this ship is way bigger than what we initially think because they're going through and they're trying to figure out ways. Well, first they're trying to find the alien.
Right.
Then they're trying to figure out how to isolate and kill it. But It's almost like a system of tunnels or caves. They're going through this ship, and it's always these tight spaces, but you never really know how far they're going to have to go to find this creature, or if it's right behind them, like that kind of thing. With a relatively small budget, with these really well-built set pieces, they were able to build an entire ship really in such small areas and make the viewer feel the same way that the audience does, where they're unsure of what's around the next corner, and you can't always see what's right in front of you, right?
Right. One thing you pointed out when we watched it together, you pointed out the heartbeat noise. That kind of it is such a great audio cue into the fact that the alien is nearby. There's this sound in the movie. It's just the sound of a heartbeat. And I've seen Alien a few times, and I never noticed that until you pointed it out. And it's such a cool little kind of small note in the whole movie, to where you are getting this little tiny cue to say, hey, by the way, something's about to happen. Mm-hmm. You don't see it. The character doesn't see it, but you know it's there as the viewer.
Well, and it comes and goes. It's not just constant. It's very strategically placed.
Right.
And one thing that I thought was really interesting too is watching these characters trying to figure out. That they know nothing about this creature that they've just discovered. They're trying to figure out how it works, and oftentimes they're wrong. Like when they're talking about the face hugger, and they're like, "Oh, it's injecting oxygen into the host,
right,
to keep it alive so that it can live." Mm-hmm. Later on, we see the chest bursting alien, and we kind of put together what was really happening.
Right.
But these characters have no idea. Mm-hmm. They're and at their core, they're still scientists trying to figure out this new discovery.
Right.
They're still doing their job.
Yeah. There's a lot of misdirection in this movie, too.
Yeah.
Like the thing about the facehugger with the oxygen, that line is given by Ash, who ends up being an AI, right? He ends up being a robot whose entire goal in this mission is to get them to this planet, get the alien on the ship, at whatever cost.
Yes.
Crew expendable. That's a line that
exactly.
the ship's computer actually writes out, that crew is expendable. Mm-hmm. Right? So there are so many good kind of misdirects with his character that you're never in a state of knowing what might happen next, because every bit of information you get could be completely wrong, or it could change in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that really adds to the kind of, I guess it adds to the tension of the film, but it also just kind of adds to that fear of not knowing, right?
Right.
There's so much of that in this movie. Just the fact that you don't know what's going to come next or how it's going to happen, because all the information you're getting is you're just kind of discovering it like the characters are. But the thing is, what they're discovering could be not really right. It could be so far from the truth that it's going to actually get them in trouble. Yes. Or get them hurt.
There's a lot of speculation from the characters that doesn't always end up working in their favor.
This movie also was, I don't know that it was necessarily groundbreaking, but it was one of the first movies that I can really think of from this time period that had a female protagonist in a lead role. Mm-hmm. But again, her character's kind of a misdirect, because you think at the beginning of the movie that Dallas, the captain, is going to be our main character, and he's going to lead the characters to safety and all this stuff. But in the end, it's actually Ripley who makes these decisions in order to get them to a place of safety, or at least attempted safety.
Right.
There's a dog barking outside.
I heard it.
Did you hear it?
There's a dog barking inside.
Come here, Thor. Come here, buddy. It's okay. He's okay.
One thing I thought that this was kind of interesting. We're talking about scary stuff. He's scared right now.
Don't be scared. We're not actually watching it.
That's why we didn't let him watch Alien with us.
Yeah, because he would have barked the whole time.
One thing I noticed, though, is that we never see, and this goes back to scale again, but this time scale of the alien. We never see the full-grown alien in its entirety until the very end when it's pushed out of the spaceship.
Right,
and even then, it's just a brief glimpse. We know that it is much larger than any of these characters. Probably a lot stronger too. Right. We see the space that it takes up in the ship because we're inside these rooms and the alien is in there with us, and we still can't see it in its entirety. We just see the head, or we just see its body moving around, or whatever it is. It's not until it's pushed out of the ship that we finally get a real brief glimpse of the actual scale of our monster.
Right. That's one of the best things about this movie too, is it never focuses for too long on it only gives you such brief glimpses. Mm-hmm. Right? Like in one of the first kills, it like jumps down from like rafters or something. but you see it jump down, but it's just such a quick moment, and then it takes a quick cut to like the side of its face as it kind of leans its face up, right?
Yeah.
But every single moment with the alien is like that. There's no real scene where you just kind of see it in its full glory, like running around. You only ever see it in like close-ups next to a character, or you only see its face when it like when the secondary mouth pops out and like, you know, shoots out at people. Then that's one of the biggest advantages this movie has is it doesn't give you enough time to see the full thing, because I think when you see something in its entirety, it becomes less of the thing itself becomes less of a fear
because there's less unknown.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're getting these quick little bits and pieces. So all you know is that it's got a kind of a weird, elongated like facial structure, right? It's got a secondary mouth, but you don't know how big it is. You don't know what all it could possibly do, where its weak spots are.
Yeah.
You only know these certain little things, and that adds to the fear because you just don't know what it looks like. How it can
we barely
hide
even know its strengths. We
Right.
know that it is an effective hunter, basically.
It has acid blood. It's an effective hunter.
But we don't really learn what it's capable of either.
Right.
And that adds to it. Well, dude, we went from maybe our most obvious cliche horror movie on the list with Sinister to, I guess, one of the less obvious. This Alien is just as much a sci-fi movie
Right.
as it is a horror movie, but it's not always easily recognizable as a horror movie.
Right.
But I think there are so many horror elements that work so well, and this movie I feel like sets the tone for a lot of future sci-fi movies, a lot of creature building and monster movies.
Alien is a masterclass in tension.
Yeah.
In how you give the viewer just enough to create the maximum amount of tension in each scene.
Right.
And that's one reason why I love this movie so much, is because I'm not always like, I don't feel like dread or fear in like the sense from like Sinister where something's trying to haunt these people.
Yeah.
I feel fear because I am always so unsure of what's going to happen next. I'm not sure what's going to pop out of the corner. I'm not sure what decisions the characters might make that could lead them down the right or wrong path, because again, kind of with another, I can't remember which movie we talked about, we're just kind of experiencing things as they unfold.
Yeah.
Alien is a lot about, and it's kind of a combo. It's a combo of knowing when a character is helpless and then feeling helpless yourself, and not knowing when a character is helpless, but still knowing that sense of helplessness could come at any moment in the runtime.
Well, and what you said about building tension, they do it so well visually, because they're never, as much as they avoid showing us the alien in full, they're not afraid to show us the alien. They give us all kinds of glimpses. They don't shy away from putting the alien on screen, but they're very particular about how they show it. And it helps them build tension a lot better than a lot of similar films can.
It's kind of like with the Babadook, right? You only ever get just enough to kind of know, but not fully know. So, you're in this constant state of having a little bit, but never enough to really kind of overcome that initial fear of that something is in the dark over there, but I don't know what it fully is or what it could fully do to me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best advantages that Alien has going for it.
Well, and in the back of our minds too, we know that there are more out there.
Yes.
That we don't fully understand the creature, but we also don't really know how many there might be. And then there's the reveal that the crew on this ship are considered expendable by the people that sent them, and there's just so much working for it to create that fear, and it does it masterfully.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, dude. We did it.
We did.
It's another one.
Another one in the book.
It's actually our last one. I don't know.
Technically, yeah.
How we're going to release all of these, but it is.
Since we're not doing it in order. We are.
We concluded Front Row Frights.
We did. We are all done. All done with the Frights.
All right, guys. If you've liked what you've seen for this whole series so far, you've got a couple more coming, at least one more coming, depending on how we release these.
Yeah.
But let us know. Let us know what you think of our discussions so far. Let us know what you thought of our just general horror discussions from last week as well. Leave us some good reviews if you want to. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Front Row Seats on YouTube. Mm-hmm. We are Front Row Podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, on Spotify. Right now we're working on getting some social media pages up and running, so be on the lookout for our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any suggestions for future movies to cover. We will, of course, we want to continue visiting horror genre, so if you have suggestions, let us know. Classics or new ones coming up. What else you got, Gus?
I think that's it, man.
All right.
Well, we'll have the rest of the videos out, obviously, throughout this week. And I don't know what we're doing after this. We're going to keep, pushing content out, at least 1 or 2 a week. And, probably try and come up with another series. I think this has been a lot of fun, having a little bit more of a focus. Really, because, we can't get into theaters yet still, which makes getting a focus. Like, if we were in theaters every weekend, it would feel a little more fluid. But, I'm excited to finish this up, get it all done and out to the people, and then figure out what we're doing next.
All right, dude.
Sweet. See you guys next time. I got to do it.